Our guest on today's episode is Judy Larson. Judy is one of the founders of the Placemakers Co-op, which is an artist group in Lemon, South Dakota, population 1,200. Judy shares the entire arc of this journey in terms of what led her to wanting to create this, why they did it, and the impact that it's had, not just on their community, but on her as a person. This is one of those things, creative placemaking is one of those things that really can be a difference maker in creating a quality of life that will make our communities the kinds of place that people love to call home. So be sure that you check the show notes as well. Judy name drops beautifully a lot of the artists that they've worked with locally. And of course, if we can ever support people in encouraging them to support local artists, we want to do that. So please check out the show notes and be sure to give Lemon some love. Enjoy this chat with my friend Judy. Hey, Judy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, you are a gem. And I can't wait to talk about this with you because you and your crew, which you'll tell us all about, you're doing some really cool things in a small town in North Dakota. So why don't we just start there? Like, you're Judy. Where are you from? What does creative placemaking look like in your community?
Sure. Well, I have to say that I'm a South Dakota girl. I do live in North Dakota, and the town that I consider to be my town is Lemon, which is a South Dakota town, a border town. We're a border town. So we're part in North Dakota and part in South Dakota.
Okay.
And so I'm a North Dakota resident, but kind of a South Dakota girl.
Yeah. What's the population of Lemon?
About 1,200.
Okay. Yeah. So it's even smaller than my town. Okay.
Yeah.
So well, maybe just tell us a bit about your journey, like who you are as a person and how in a town the size of Lemon, this idea of creative placemaking even came about.
Okay. A little bit about me. I grew up sort of in the area. I did go to high school in Lemon, and I launched into a healthcare career, did that for a while, was on an economic development board and loved it. I just loved it. And so they ended up having an opening for their executive director. And so I took that job.
I don't think I even knew you did that.
I did. This is way back. This is in way back land, pre-kid.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And so I did that, and I really did love that. And then when I started having kids, I decided that that was the time when I could stay home with them. We were able to do that. We'd saved up some money. My husband was teaching at the time, and then he moved to farming, currently farms on would be his great grandpa's place.
Okay.
And so we do that. But so then that was my opportunity. I was like, okay, well, this is when I can be a stay-at-home mom and I can do that thing. I don't want to do that when my kids are in their 20s because that's just weird. I hope that they leave home before they.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom with 20-something children.
I get this. Yeah. I've said this to my kids before. Like, you will leave. I love you, but the goal is to help you fly.
Yeah, exactly. I tell, especially my boys, I tell them, you are not going to be living in my basement.
Yeah,
you can build a house next to my house.
Yeah.
You can build a house somewhere else, but you're not going to be living in my basement. I love you, and I don't want that for you because I know that limits you. And they can do their laundry now, so I feel good about that. So I have 5 kids, and my oldest is turning 20 this year. So I have currently 19, 17, 16, 13, a 15 is that guy, and a 10-year-old. So.
Well, that's a busy life though. I mean, let's just be real. Like 5 kids is a lot of kids. Not too many. I'm not saying it's too many. It's just a lot.
Yeah. There's a lot of different directions that we go in. And our family has a lot of hobbies that they do. And so our house is small and filled with all sorts of things that pertain to their hobbies. And it was busy when they were all little. They were all born within, 9 years or whatever. And that was really busy. And now it's a different kind of busy.
Right.
And then moving through, what I'm doing now is I manage a contract for our farm. It's our conservation contract. So I've been doing that for 5 years.
Okay.
Our contract is up. I'm just finishing it up this year. So that's what I've been doing as my paid job. And so now I'm a free agent.
Yeah.
And I have to figure out what's next. So
Watch out, Lemon.
I'm working at that. Yeah. So, and I think that kind of brings me up to now.
Can I back you up to one thing?
Sure.
What did you love the most about being on the Economic Development Board? Because I'm just going to say something that might be unpopular, but it's okay. I don't know that I always find that people's experience with an Economic Development Board in particular is as positive as it was for you. You know, a lot of times I think, and I'll even say in my own community, I think sometimes there's the perception that that board has all the power and all the money and the closest of all the minds. Like their minds are closed is not a word, but you know, just a very closed off mindset. They tend to be kind of a source of strain and strife for people. So you were very much like, oh, I loved it. And I thought, whoa, so I have to ask about it.
Here's the thing. Yes, we were the traditional board that talks about doing things and never does things, not willing to take risks, all the things, is looking to bring in like the manufacturing or the telecommunications thing that we don't have infrastructure or workforce for.
Yep.
Yeah, that was us. What it made me realize is that I have vision. I'm a visionary.
Yeah.
I can see past some things. And I'm also a connector of both people and resources. And so that made me just feel like, wow, maybe this is where I need to be. Maybe this is what I need to be doing. You know, I was in my 20s then. So looking back on it, I go, why did I do it that way? Or there are so many other things or whatever. But really, it gave me that opportunity to realize that I was a visionary. Now, don't get me wrong. You're still working for a board that maybe isn't visionary or maybe is the traditional whatever.
Right.
And getting past that, I'm not really even sure I ever got past that. But it at least helped me become more me, where I could find that where my intersect,
right,
so to speak, is I was in healthcare. I moved into economic development. I love healthy communities. And those two things just mesh so well together.
Right.
So I don't know if it was great for the board that I was working for. I don't know if it was great for the community, but it was great for me.
And that makes a ton of sense, I think. And I think sometimes we neglect to look back on maybe it was hard, maybe something was hard, maybe something was challenging, but then really looking at it like, how did I grow from this? Because we always do. And usually the hard stuff is what it forges that strength of character the most. But at the time, usually it's not that easy to see. So I just had to ask because I think that's really cool.
And I'm not sure I saw it at the time either. I think I was still, you're in your 20s. You're still like wanting to prove yourself or to show that you're really good at something or to do that wow thing. And not realizing that wow thing is just being you.
I think that's everybody's life goal and journey is to figure out who they are and how do we steward our gifts well. Like that's a huge foundational thing of why I'm even doing all the work that I'm doing is because I want to help people figure out what they're good at, right? Figure out what their unique and special talents and skills and gifts are, and then try to align them with ways that they can share those things readily. So I think if all you learned was who you are and that's all you have to be to give your big gift to the world, I think that's a huge lesson to learn. I really do.
Yeah, I'm thankful for all of that now that I'm older.
Right. Okay, so speaking of all of that, here we are to present day. And who is Judy today?
I'm the juggler.
Yeah, for sure.
But I would have to say that how I see myself and I think what I bring to my community is that, I'm a connector, I'm a communicator, a supporter, encourager, and nurturer, really. I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I'm a musician. But in reality, those aren't things that I think of myself as. Those are things that I do, and they're a part of me. But I think what it comes right down to is I am a nurturer of people. I finally decided to get on my business cards because I've been in a weird stage of not really having a title, so to speak. My business cards now say community enthusiast on them.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I love it. You're delineating the difference between the things that we do and the way that we are, so doing versus being. And a lot of times our doing flows out of our being. But when, like in absence of a title in life, sometimes it can feel like I just want some easy way to say who I am and how I move through the world. And I think that's awesome. I would say that I feel like I'm a bit of a community enthusiast myself. What a great title for yourself. So how do you show up as a community enthusiast today?
Well, currently it's been COVID. So showing up in community has not been a really easy thing to do. But we just gathered a group of people and have been meeting on Zoom, and we put together an arts council. We're all set to get our 501c3. We're just waiting on the IRS and hoping and praying. We're in the 4 weeks to 6 months period, or whatever they tell you.
Right.
It's supposed to take.
It'll come back faster than that, hopefully. Well, hopefully. I mean, granted, here we are in the middle of, like, I don't know how the IRS, well, they're definitely impacted by this, so I shouldn't, hopefully it'll come back sooner than that. So tell me a little bit about that. What's your arts council? So you previously didn't have one in Lemon, is that correct?
There wasn't one in this whole corner of the state of South Dakota. So it's a South Dakota Arts Council.
Okay.
Called Grand River Arts Council, and it covers pretty much the southwest corner of, well, the northwest corner of South Dakota, southwest North Dakota. We're just, working into that, really hoping to be able to provide that structure for the grants process, for one.
Okay, sure.
And just also for programming too, and support of artists in the area. We have a lot of artists here and writers.
And I'll tell you what I would really love to know from you is how you found them. Like, did you create a mechanism, or was there some sort of a vehicle or avenue that you specifically used to find those people? Because this is something I want to do in my area too, through our organization, is like cultivating that talent. Because I know what's out there. I know it is. And I'll tell you, you're going to love this. So with this building that we're renovating, I have discovered 3 separate people that I didn't know did cool stuff. And they're going to be designing things for our space. So we get to highlight their local stuff. And then hopefully we can have a show with them there. And that kind of stuff lights me up so much. And yet, if you just say like, hey, who does art? People are like, I don't know.
Do art.
Yeah, I'm not an artist. Right. So how did that, because that takes intention. I don't care what anybody says. They're not just going to come out of the woodwork and be like,
right.
So I would love to know what you guys did, because that's really cool.
I didn't identify as an artist, a musician, or a writer prior to kind of what's been happening in our town. How it started, I would say, are 2 things. One is called Fail with Friends. Fail, like Fail, with Friends, which is basically, I just started putting out an invite to my Facebook friends, my local friends, to say, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing. I've always wanted to do it. Do you want to come and join me? It was like things like making those beeswax wraps, that you can use instead of, just dumb.
I'm giggling. It's like Pinterest fails, but publicly. Yeah. That's why I think it's really funny, because a lot of those crafty things I'd be failing at for sure. So
and it was just a fun chance to get together and fail at things together.
Right. I love it.
And so we did some of those things. And the last one that we had at our house, and we do have a small farmhouse, and we had like 20 some people here, 3 dogs, everybody's kids. It was just packed, and we were making bath bombs because, hey, I'd never made bath bombs before. Why not give it a try? So it's like all of the lavender is going on, and the peppermint and everything. And it's just like overwhelming. Plus it's just overwhelming because there's so many people in my house. And we decided we needed to organize, that this was important, that this was bringing people together. And it was really drawing out who they were. It was letting other people in the community know that there were people interested in doing things.
Yeah.
So we ended up forming what we call Placemakers Co-op. And you can look us up on the web. We've got a website out there now, and Facebook and all the goods. And started doing things. Our Placemakers mission statement, I guess, is Placemakers Co-op creates space for makers and doers to share ideas, collaborate, build relationships, and use their varied talents for the good of the group and the community.
Yeah, it's fantastic. There is so much synergy between that overall mission statement and the mission statement for growing small towns. It's kind of incredible. Yes. Yeah, it's kind of incredible. And and this thing grew so organically, which I think is so cool. Yes. And that's what I hope to see happen here too. I mean, I hope.
I think it can happen. And I think it depends on what your intent is. And it was really exciting for us to go through this phase. And now my friend Michael Van Beek and I, and my husband, Todd Larson, we were all pretty integral in getting this off the ground. I'd say it was kind of our baby that we just made this happen.
Yeah.
And all of us have kind of stepped away from it. We still are supportive and doing things, but just being able to hand that off was such a glorious moment. We have some structure to it. It's also very loose. There's usually an activity or a class or an event, something once a month. It's really based on the talent of the people in the group. Like, hey, do you do leather tooling? Teach a class. You make kombucha? Oh, I'd like to learn how to do that. Let's have a class. Or doing a fun event for the town. One of the things that we do is, and this really gets into the creative placemaking aspect of it. They didn't fill our ice skating rink for 2 years because the kids didn't use it. Well, the kids aren't going to use it if you don't fill it.
Right.
So we hosted what we called a smoke and ice festival and asked the city council to fill the skating rink, and they did. And, they were glad to do it, but they just didn't see it as a big push because nobody was using it. Again, they can't if it's rained. So one of our people that we work, or that is a part of Placemakers Co-op is, he has a barbecue business. So
Cool.
We did smoked meats. That was the smoke part of it. And then ice games, things on the ice skating rink, snow sculptures, whatever you could think of. And everybody just kind of contributed what they could to make it really an event.
Yeah.
And it was a celebration of winter weather. Sometimes in the winter, we don't want to go outside because yuck.
Right.
And
there's months of it.
Yeah. You got to do something about that.
Right. Absolutely. You do.
So it needs to be celebrated. And there's nothing wrong with getting outside. It's just a matter of sometimes we need that nudge and that purpose. And that's a big part of what I see with creative placemaking is giving people a purpose and giving people an avenue to use their talents to make their space, whatever it is, their community, their own space better.
So with your Placemakers Co-op group, when you say the people in the group, what does being in the group mean?
It's very fluid, which is kind of weird. Just because we had to get a checkbook, we ended up having to have officers.
Right.
So we do have a little bit of structure, and we did go to a once a month meeting with just because we decided that was a structure that maybe we needed. But anybody can be a placemaker.
Yeah.
So we don't have a limit on that. Anybody can show up at our meetings. They're public.
Yep.
For a while, we were just kind of having them in different public spaces in the bar or wherever. Now we've kind of settled on at the Legion Club because they just have been really welcoming and have a great space for us to meet. And, just being able to be open and transparent has allowed people to come and sit in with us and see what we're, they've learned a little bit about what we're about. Do they want to help out, or do they have that thing that they want to see happen?
Yeah.
Show up. That's what's required to be a placemaker is what we call it. Everybody calls themselves a placemaker. So to be a placemaker, what's required is that you show up.
So do you maintain some sort of a directory of your local artists?
No, but we should.
Well, I only ask because, again, this is something, so structurally, I think about these things, so once I find these people, I feel like I too, do I just put them on a spreadsheet? Ideally, I have some way of managing it, right? And these are all the questions I was so excited to ask you about because, first of all, let me just say, I love the flexible, adaptable, fluid nature of how this organization runs. And I think that's the only way it can work, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And I should say only, that's really close-minded, but it's a better way than so much structure that you have to be crammed into a box. And then the whole idea of creativity is just squelched anyway, right? So I don't generally move in that direction, but I also know that when it comes right down to it, structure and management of some sort is probably really helpful for just, having some direction. And I really do want to figure out, is it a directory of people? Because I think, again, I don't know who they are. So I don't just want to ask. I want to ask and then remember and then call on them. I think makers markets would be a really fun thing to bring into my community. I don't know if you guys have talked about that. If you found a bunch of people that do their own handmade stuff, It's just, these are some of the things I think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's great to think about that too. It's ever evolving, I would say, for us.
Yeah.
Which is the nature of the beast. On our website, there's an opportunity for a blog, and we're talking about doing some bios and that kind of thing of some of the main people. We haven't quite gotten there. And what we're finding is that, people are talented and creative and maybe have that thing that they do, but we're all Dakotans. So we can't toot our horn.
Right. The humility.
We can't be the one that shows up there and says, this is what I do, albeit maybe I do it kind of in a mediocre way. I'm not, rock star famous. And so that's been a little bit of a thing to notice, I guess. I think honoring that people don't want to be that public about what they do is a good thing as well.
Sure.
Taking notes, and I guess I've just kind of got mental notes because I know the people here. I'm from here. I know the people here, and I've kind of just cataloged that in my brain. But again, like I said, at this point, I really feel like people don't want to be singled out. In a sense. There's some people that already have their web pages. Shasta Marie Designs is fabulous. She's done a fabulous job, and she's the vice president right now. She does a lot of lino cuts and that kind of thing. They're amazing. And she's got a public face right now.
Yeah.
And so that's good. And then Brittanyography is another, Brittany Schnell. She does photography for us a lot. She's done a lot of work on the website where, she's already got a public image and she's comfortable with that.
Right. Well, I think, so it's funny, what we're kind of dancing on is the discussion of honoring each individual maker's intention of what they want their art to be and what they want it to represent in the world. Mm-hmm. And yet I also think too, or I question anyway, it's one of my kind of general hypotheses that's guiding this part of programming for our organization is, are there people that would try to make money at selling or distributing their art if they felt that that was A, possible, and B, if they had some support in doing so? But I think we have both of that. I think we have those people that would love to sell and actually make somewhat of a living out of their art. And then there's people that they would never dare charge for their art. And both people should be able to do it the way they want to do it. So I think it's just figuring out how to support all of kind of both ends of that spectrum, right?
Right. And when you talk about conversion rates and all those kind of things, not everybody needs to be converted to an economic model.
Oh, exactly.
And I think, but I have enough economic development background that I kind of feel that all the time. That's where the nurturing comes in as well.
Right.
I really think having that supportive community that when they're ready to burst, when they're just like, I need to do this, it's going to be successful because we are behind them 100%.
Yep.
We've made it known that whatever talents we have are theirs to use, and just the support system is there.
Yeah, it's like an incubation program for artists and creatives.
But part of that is, when you work with artists and creatives, deadlines and structure and all of those kind of things, which we're so wanting to do when it comes to economic development, because we have to boil it down to the numbers so that boards understand that it's important. I mean, I even see our governor, Doug Burgum, making some ideas that were traditionally maybe seen as pretty darn liberal into dollars and cents and going, this is why it makes sense.
Right.
And I'm thankful for that because somebody needs to do that as well.
What you're talking about, I think, is one of the biggest challenges for people that really value creativity. I value art and I value culture and I value what it does for my soul. Right. So it's like, how do I what's a soul metric? At one point I made the joke that I am just going to measure the number of times in a day and a week I feel a heart swell. It's so ridiculous. But it's if I got to count something. So I think about this all the time, Judy, how do we measure the value of something that doesn't necessarily equate to dollars and cents? Because it doesn't mean it's not valuable. That's quality of life, right?
Right.
It's not quantity of life. It's quality of life. And so I find this to be a huge challenge personally.
But when we're talking, again, converting people or whatever we want to call it, in a different sense, COVID's been the best for this. Just the best. I mean, the band that I'm in has had way fewer gigs, but we've done some online stuff that has reached people in a broader audience, and they appreciate it because they had the opportunity to come out and see us live before, but things were busy or whatever. They didn't know if they would enjoy it. But when they have the opportunity to sample it from their own home, and when everything else is yucky that they're watching or listening to, hearing about, man, a good old country song or a rock song is pretty, you get the heart swell.
It's healing is what it is.
It is. And people didn't realize they even needed healing, I think, pre-COVID. A lot of people didn't.
Totally agree. Right. I totally agree. And I don't even know if people realize they still need healing, but they know that it makes them feel better. They get that. I think all of us, like, it's music and sometimes it's even movies, right?
Right.
Having Hamilton on Disney Plus. Yes. I seriously have watched that no less than a dozen times. And my husband will come in and be like, again? Yeah, I just can't get enough of it. Like, and I could have made the time to go to a Broadway show, but life got in the way of that.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it is. It's really cool. And it has made it more accessible. And I think it slowed us down enough that we can have a different level of appreciation for all of it than we maybe did before.
The difference in accessibility as well for people in rural towns, like you're talking. You could have gone to a Broadway show, but I mean, really fit that into a farming lifestyle.
Well, totally.
All the planning and then have the cash on hand that particular year that you decide to do that. So.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Okay. This is I'm like loving talking to you. I knew that I would. I have two questions that have come to my brain as we've been talking. One, your original Placemakers Co-op group started with you and two men, mostly. Right?
Yeah.
Did you always end up having a mixed bag of people in terms of even gender?
Good. Yeah.
Really? Like, how about bath bombs? Did you have guys show up to make bath bombs?
We had dudes.
I see. I love that. And I wouldn't have anticipated that at all.
Well,
and right now,
the bath bombs. They were
right.
For the bath bombs,
Right. But I love it. Because locally here, I think we've got little groups of women that do this. And because women need the connection and women do that well. But I would love to see guys come and play and have, I would love to get them into that mix a bit more. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. We definitely have had a good mix of men and women. Although right now all of our officers are women. And I see some of that,
Sure.
They're the ones that are kind of willing to take on some of those roles. But I think the openness of take it or leave it, dudes, is a good thing too. Like, I'm not your wife forcing you to go to a painting class. You want to come? Great.
Right.
And if you don't, that's great too. A lot of our artists, a good number of our artists are men.
Yeah, which helps.
Too. Yeah. John Lopez. I can't forget John. I have to plug John everywhere I go because he's the most amazing man. All
three of these people that you've mentioned, they have websites?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then I'm just going to say it for everybody listening. Like, don't try to take down these names. We'll link all of this stuff in the show notes because we want to celebrate your artists too, of course. Yeah. So tell us about John.
So John was an artist from day one, but really, there wasn't support for that in the late 80s here. Mm-hmm. So John went off and he did some projects and was a great sculptor, did a bunch of sculptures in bronze, and then he converted to doing this scrap metal. And he moved back home. His parents were aging, and he then took over what's called Kokomo Inn right now. It was an old bar, an old 3-2 bar that was in disrepair. So he made it into his gallery, and that opened up possibilities. It really helped the town see themselves differently because people come here for art.
Yeah, which is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, we support artists. So artists want to come here. Kathleen Norris is a writer that wrote Dakota and I don't know, there are a whole bunch of books that ended up being on the New York Times bestseller list. And she wrote some of those while she was living here. We just have so much talent in this area that I think that there's an undercurrent of seeing it as kind of normal, but to have artists around.
Yeah.
But what we've done is convert that into it's normal for everyone to be an artist. We're all creatives. What do you do that's creative?
Right. So here's a question I'm going to take you back to. You had said it started with two things. The first was fail with friends.
The second was John Lopez.
Okay,
so
perfect.
I did get it in.
You did get it in, but I was like, I need to make sure I write it down.
Yes.
So just John and kind of, it was a launching point almost when he came back, took that.
Kind of, yeah. Well, and his gallery space is beautiful and inspiring, and he's so gracious and generous with our band. We've done a number of live streams during COVID because it's beautiful and good acoustics and all the things. And he has, art shows and parties and art classes. And he doesn't do all of them, but he allows people to use his space.
Yeah.
And really wants it to be a vibrant space. And we didn't have that. We had basketball and football and volleyball and soccer, track and cross country and wrestling. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some of them. Prior to that, if you were going to go somewhere on a Tuesday night, it would be to a basketball game. It wouldn't be to a paint and sip. And that's our first event was a paint and sip.
Sure.
The first official event that we had. And we just did it word of mouth because we were like, I don't know who's going to show up. I don't know if this is going to be a big deal. But then the people of course, we put it all over Facebook because it was super fun, and Instagram. And the people that didn't get invited, that were probably at the basketball game, were all like, how come I didn't know about this? How come I didn't know about this? This looks like so much fun. Well, it was, but we didn't know that you'd be interested.
Yep. I think you're touching on something that is really prevalent in a small community. I mean, it's to the point where it's not a fear of mine, but it'll constantly be a battle. Scheduling stuff is a nightmare.
It is, and it isn't.
So what I was just going to say is that you're reminding me though, that people won't know they have a choice to make unless you give them the choice. So like, that's what you're reminding me is that like, yeah, we're maybe not going to pull away some of the hardcore sports fanatics into these events, but there's other people that might need it and that you never know. You just never know. Like they can't choose it if we don't give the option to go. So it's just about staying open-minded to the fact that like, and I've always said this, like as a speaker and as an event organizer person, right? That the people that need to be there will be there. That's what I always say.
Exactly. And don't get caught up on numbers.
Right.
I think that's really important too. But it was pretty amazing the fact that it was a basketball night and we still had 30 people painting.
Mm-hmm. Right. I love it.
So now we've just decided that we schedule when it works for the artist. You schedule whenever it works for the person that's willing to do the class. You think about what your demographic is that you're trying to draw. Are you working with school kids? Because we do a bike tune-up in the spring. Well, we need to make sure that it works for school kids. We do need to make sure of that. But we don't need to make sure that art works for sports-minded people. They can be sports-minded people, and that's okay.
Right.
And there's enough that is going on that will allow them to experience that if they truly, are interested.
Yeah.
Not everything is going to be scheduled on a Tuesday night.
Oh, right. And I think if nothing else, it just, when I think about what I want my community to be, I want my community to be a place where whatever your interest is, there's a way to nurture that interest. And right now art and this kind of a focus is missing in an obvious way from my community, I think, and from our area, not just my town, but kind of the towns around us. Your Placemakers group, does it have a regional focus or is it really just right in the core of Lemon?
That's kind of hard to say because we do draw people from like surrounding towns.
Sure.
In fact, our secretary works in Hettinger, lives by Bison, which is another small town. And we do draw from the towns around us because there isn't something like this going on in the towns around us. I would say, and there's a huge opportunity in southwestern North Dakota as well, where it's not really happening like this. We've had people ask us to speak. We spoke in Bowman and about the concept, but we're really, really sure that we got through to them that this needs to be organic. This is not a chain. We're not franchising this concept.
Right.
It has to be for your town.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to use the talents of the people in your town. And they're going to be different from what they are in our town.
Right. What is the actual formation of your arts council? How did that come about? And how do you see it as being different from your Placemakers Co-op group?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, Placemakers is our sort of loosely organized, very fluid group, right? We have officers because we needed a checkbook. The Arts Council is the opportunity to support artists in a fiscal way, basically.
Okay.
To make things happen for artists to support them. And also, if we wanted to bring something into town as well, there's a lot of grants that require you to be a 501c3.
Right.
Well, Placemakers isn't that. John himself doesn't have his own foundation, I'm going to say yet. So that leaves us with the economic development group as the 501c3 as a pass-through or a fiscal sponsor.
Yeah.
The word it's not trustworthy, but it really does depend on the whim of the people on the board.
Right. And I think there is something to be said about the strength of a grant application being the organization that it just shows a different level of commitment. That's what I think the actual establishment of a 501c3 does too. It's saying, this is who we are. This is what we do. And like you said, instead of trying to convince the current board members of economic development that art matters, instead of having to even do that, you just get to be in control of that. I mean, hey, like you're speaking to I did that. That's what I did, because for the same reason, I just thought I want to be able to pursue the things that align with this vision that I have for what this organization will do. And I don't have to ask for permission.
Yes, I completely understand that.
So if the co-op wanted to create some sort of specific program, they could actually come to your arts council potentially for help with that. Like if there was a grant that you could plug them into or whatever. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But it doesn't tie up their meetings with all of the legalese and all of that kind of stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with strategic doing.
No.
Strategic doing is like a management, I don't know if it's a management style, but okay, so we usually do strategic planning.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's kind of a big downer because it's really hard to be agile. And when you use a strategic plan, you either shelf it or you get all control freak about it. And we have to do this by then.
Yeah.
And so really the concept of Placemakers follows a lot of the strategic doing, where if it's important, do it and reevaluate. And then if it becomes unimportant, don't do it.
Right. I love that nimble approach to execution. I think it's really important.
And it's really more about doing than about writing down what you're going to do. That fits with who we are as Dakotans, because with an egg sector base, we are used to the whims of the weather.
Yeah.
And we need to be agile. We have to be agile. It's in our blood to be agile.
And I love to joke that like my husband and our, like the farm, they're the worst at planning. They're the best at it in some respects, but they don't ever just sit down and because you can't plan things out like that. You can't. It would be such wasted effort for them to do that because they act when like there are some days that it would be fit to do this thing and not fit to do this other thing, right? That's exactly, it is kind of in our blood to be more like, okay, what does it make sense to do today? Then let's do that.
And I'm just going to interject a little tiny thing into that.
Yeah.
Slightly off topic, but that works great for agriculturally based businesses to be, able to be flexible like that. But sometimes it jerks around their family member that is working in something that's not egg based or has to get the kids to school or has to do those kind of things. And I don't know what to do with that intersect just yet. Right.
Because that's just it. Like kids thrive on systems. I mean, kids do. Kids need the structure. You say, I totally get. That's where I just want to be like, what can't we? Well, that's why I like my yard plans and none of that gets on any sort of strategic plan or doing. It just sits and waits. It just waits until it fits into his.
Because we won't be so busy in the fall.
Right.
And then we won't be so busy in the spring.
Right. Yeah. Just keep waiting. We'll stop being so busy. Right. Well, this is so awesome. Judy, what else? What else would you want our listeners to know about just generally about starting something like this in their community?
Well, this kind of ties into that, but I think it ties into all volunteerism, all community work. If you are always thinking about, how it's always the same 10 people, it's always the same 10 people. I hear that all the time. That's on you. If it's the same 10 people, that's your fault. You need to be out there nurturing, mentoring, cultivating some new leadership or
involvement.
Create situations where you can interact with people that you maybe normally don't interact with because they're out there. We just won't let them a lot of times.
I think this is such an important way to kind of wrap this part of this conversation, because I think the truth is we aren't allowing them because we're trying to control too tightly the entire A to Z plan, right? And so I know I've said this to women's groups when I've been talking to them, the idea of saying no to things. Like if you're one of the same 10 people, or you're one of the 20% that feels like you do 80% of the work, that sometimes you need to say no. And I mean, the bristling that women have when I say that, and I've just said to them, I think there's a couple things to think about here. If an organization or an event has happened for 30 years in your community, and the last few years, as you've been trying to pull this same event off, whether it's exactly the same or it's the same group of people or whatever, and you're having a harder and harder time getting people to get involved, getting people to support it, it might be time to let it die its natural death. Because the problem is, it could be, it's not a given, but maybe we don't have the thing broken down into easy enough chunks or simple enough chunks. Right. Is it like you run the whole stinking thing or you're not a part of it? Well, you're making it too hard to get involved, right? So I think, and you had said it earlier, this idea of simple, easy ways to access it and to contribute, right? That ways that are small. Let people show up and give what they can give and value that. And then that's that organic fostering of leadership for the thing to continue. We hold way too tight sometimes to how we've always done things. And that's why things don't advance, or we don't get new blood involved at all.
Right. And it's offering up those micro commitments, I think, where you be like, I just need somebody to bring 2 coffee carafes for the hot chocolate contest. Is there anybody out there that can do that? And that helps people feel involved, even if they're doing a tiny thing. The next time they're going to do a bigger thing. They're going to have a bigger offer. One with Placemakers Co-op, I was the president for 2 years running, which went against all of my better judgment, because that's just too long. I like to have, turnover, and I felt like that was not success. But basically, we were in a startup hustle,
right,
where things needed to happen to make it really work. And a lot of the connections flowed through me and weren't ready yet. Maybe we didn't do enough on nurturing that leadership. I don't know. Or maybe it was still such a new concept to people that they were afraid to take over a leadership role. But I am happy to say that I am no longer in any sort of leadership role with Placemakers Co-op. It's completely turned over to other people. I'm glad to have, I'm the lead person. We always have a lead person for whatever we do. I'm the lead person for Live at the Lake, which is 5 nights of music that we do at our lake, Shade Hill Lake here. And I'm the lead person for that. And I do take responsibility for that. But other than that, I really don't have to do anything else for Placemakers Co-op, and they'll go on without me. That's so important to me. It made me verklempt to turn over that leadership, but not in a way that I was sad, that I was so grateful to the people
and proud.
Proud.
And that's where even our North Dakota tendencies, or Dakota tendencies, Midwest tendencies, to just be like, oh, it's no big deal. But it is a big deal. It's a big deal. And to have the pride that, because it's not just personal pride, it's pride that the whole thing, that it's taking off, that it's going to live beyond you. That's such a big deal. It's a huge deal. Yeah. And good for you, because sometimes letting go is a lot harder than we realize going into something. So I'm really glad that you were able to transition out, and now you get to contribute where you want to.
Right, exactly. And I can move on to other things like providing better structure through having the Arts Council be a 501c3. I'm still working in a support role, which is my best role.
Right. Well, Judy, you and your amazing team in Lemon, you guys are just total rock stars. And I hope that everybody listening really does take a minute to go out and check out all the individual links to the artists that you mentioned, as well as the Placemakers Co-op. Anything else you want to leave with our listeners? A call to action, if you will, or anything take away for them?
Sure. A couple of things. The Great Good Place by Ray Oldenburg.
I've never even seen that book.
It is the classic in creative placemaking.
The Great Good Place. I love it.
Yeah, and creating a third space for people to gather. So that's some really good reading. It goes way back. And then also, if people want a summary of what's happening in Lemon and really want to feel it, Deb Fallows wrote an article for The Atlantic, and we can provide you with a link to that too, that I think is just a beautiful way of gathering what has happened in our town when it comes to the visual arts.
That is super cool. And, we also should make a quick shout out to Dakota Resources for bringing
Totally.
our worlds together.
Yeah,
And I love to plug them whenever I can, but Dakota Resources is a beautiful organization in South Dakota. We'll link to them as well. But you and I are in a network together because of them. And that network of people, they are always talking about lemon. when it comes to creativity and nurturing art. So I think it's super special. I'm so thankful that you were able to come on and bless our listeners with the discussion about this. And you guys are definitely a community to look at and to model ourselves after. So thanks, Judy. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Rebecca. And thanks for what you're doing. I really believe in it. And I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.